Welcome to Talk About TV, where we talk about all things experiential outdoor hospitality. I'm your host, Michelle Oliver, and this is Expitality Time, the experience of hospitality, because the experience of hospitality transforms the world one moment at a time. I wanted to talk today a little bit about the myth of transformational hospitality. You know how we all talk about transformation in hospitality? We throw around these phrases like experience design, emotional engineering, anticipating needs. We study the story brand framework, the experience economy, the hero's journey, always looking for the perfect way to move our guests from one emotional state to another. And don't get me wrong, it works. A well-timed surprise, an unforgettable setting, a thoughtful moment of delight. These things do create emotion, and guests feel it. They post about it. They leave glowing reviews. But real transformation, that's different. That's the myth no one wants to say out loud. We love the idea that if we craft the perfect setting, if the check-in is seamless, if the candlelight flickers just right, if the scent of cedar and lavender is just subtle enough, it will happen. That by guiding our guests from stress to serenity, from routine to wonder, we can engineer epiphanies. But transformation doesn't work that way. Some guests will come expecting nothing and they'll leave cracked wide open. Others will arrive desperate for change and leave exactly the same. No amount of fresh linens or locally sourced honey can force someone to meet themselves. And I know this firsthand. I went to Costa Rica thinking I just needed a break. An eco resort tucked between the jungle and the ocean felt like the perfect reset. It was off-grid luxury, fresh food, the promise of stillness. But when I arrived, the quiet pressed in on me and it just stripped away all my usual distractions. I told myself I was there to rest, but really I was still running and I had no idea that I was. That's so much how most of our guests are. They don't even really know what they're seeking. And it's our job to anticipate that when we don't know ourselves. At first, I kept moving. Morning yoga, long walks on the beach, a new restaurant every day, drinks, socializing. I learned how to surf. I went swimming, anything to fill the space, anything to avoid what I didn't even know I didn't want to feel. But by the seventh night, under a sky that was, oh my God, it was so beautiful, so full of stars that I felt like I was this tiny speck just being pulled into a sparkling ocean of sky. I had nowhere left to run. The grief I had buried, the questions I had avoided, the emotions I had numbed, they all just rose to the surface. And I was floating out in this perfect temperature, warm ocean just past the break. The water was still. The moon hung high in the sky. It was draping its silver light like a fairy queen's cloak over the waves, weaving this shimmering path that just stretched out into infinity. The gentle rocking of that water, it just calmed my body. And I closed my eyes just for a moment. I just let the rhythm of the sea steady my thoughts. And then I remember in the stillness, this bright streak of light shot across the sky. It was so sudden, so clear, a shooting star blazing through the darkness, its tail leaving a trail of sparkles that seemed to just hang in the air just a beat too long. And my heart skipped with it. I remember holding my breath and my mind just went still. No more thoughts. In that moment, I felt this deep connection, not just to the vastness of the ocean beneath me or the expanse of the sky above, but to something within myself, something that had been lying dormant, just waiting. The star's flash seemed to mirror the burst of clarity that suddenly sparked inside me. And it was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful shifts are quiet ones, unseen by anyone else. I realized then, as the star disappeared and that ocean continued to rock me like a child in its mother's arms, that I couldn't keep running. I couldn't escape what I needed to face. I let the emotions come as I floated there, suspended between the earth and the sky. And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to just be. And suddenly, the silence inside me broke. I remember this, just like a sob rose up. It just came from the deepest part of my gut. It just hit me like a wave rolling through my entire body. And I gasped. I actually remember just gasping as if I had been holding my breath for years. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep running. I just let the sobs come. I let myself sink into them, water just rocking me like a child. I let the feelings move through me without trying to explain them away for the first time. And later, I remember sitting in the sand, writing furiously, pouring every thought onto the pages of my journal. And later still, I cried again, and this time in the arms of a good friend that I was with, just completely unashamed. The next morning, something had totally shifted in me. I cried, I laughed, I just felt everything. And then, like the tide rolling in and out, a lightness followed. Not because the resort transformed me, not because anyone designed my experience for this to happen, but because I was finally still enough to let it, just to let it. Real change. And by that, I mean genuine transformation comes when you shrug off the dragging weight of everything familiar and you meet yourself with grace, with acceptance, and become willing to let go of everything that is unlike the essence of who you truly are. David Hawkins talks about this. He says, the unconscious will let go of what is not real when we no longer defend it. How much of our lives do we spend defending what isn't even real, what isn't genuine to us? Personal transformation happens naturally when we surrender false beliefs, fears, and attachments. In essence, we become hospitable to ourselves. We invite everything to the table. We make space for what is already available and experience grace. Grace is hospitality. Hospitality is grace. And that's what we do in hospitality at its best. Not force the breakthrough, not try to, engineer it, but create the space where it could happen. When we can set the table, open the door, and whisper the right invitations. But the real work, that is always up to the guest. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I hope you have a most delightful weekend and go out into the world and lift up someone. And by doing so, you'll be lifted yourself. Thank you. Please come back again.